Welcome, friends. Today's story is about a man who had everything in life: money, fame, success, but deep inside, he was completely alone. He had built walls around his heart so high that even happiness couldn't climb in. One day, just for a business event, he asked a woman to pretend to be his date for one day. She agreed, not knowing that her presence would change his life forever. When she entered his life, even for that short while, something began to heal inside him. Her smile reminded him what peace felt like. Her kindness showed him what warmth meant, and her little daughter's laughter filled the empty spaces of his silent world. He tried to tell himself that it was all fake, just an act, but his heart refused to listen. Every moment with her felt real. Every glance, every word, every touch of compassion slowly melted the loneliness he had lived with for years. He watched her laugh under the rain, helping her daughter collect raindrops in her tiny hands. And for the first time in forever, he smiled from his soul. He realized that love doesn't always come with a plan. Sometimes it walks in quietly when we're least prepared, and it stays where kindness lives. As they sat together, the little girl placed her soft toy in his lap and said, "You can keep it till next time." That one innocent sentence broke every wall inside him. He looked at the woman and whispered with tears in his eyes, "Maybe I never needed perfection. I just needed someone who saw me." She smiled back, her eyes full of emotion, and said, "You were never invisible. You just needed the right hearts to see you." That day, pretending turned into truth. The lonely CEO who had spent years hiding behind his pride found love in the most unexpected corner of his life, in a woman's kindness and a child's laughter. Friends, sometimes life doesn't give us what we ask for. It gives us what we truly need. Love finds its way through the smallest acts of care. Through a smile, through a simple moment under the rain. Never stop believing in kindness, because it has the power to turn even the loneliest hearts into homes of love. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Soul of Kindness, where every story reminds us that love still exists in this world. The next morning began quietly. The sun was rising through soft clouds, painting the sky with a golden glow. The man, the same lonely CEO who once lived only for business, was standing by the window, holding a cup of coffee, lost in thoughts he couldn't escape anymore. He had promised himself that yesterday was just pretend, but every smile, every word from her still echoed in his heart. He could still hear the little girl's laughter, could still feel the warmth of the woman's hand when she touched his arm too. Something inside him had changed, and there was no going back. He looked at his reflection in the glass, a man who had everything yet nothing. His office was empty, his mansion was silent, and his success suddenly felt meaningless. He had spent his life building walls of pride, but now he wished he had built bridges instead. That one day had shown him what family, laughter, and love truly meant. He took a deep breath and went out. The rain had stopped, but the ground was still wet. The world looked washed, clean, fresh, alive. He drove to the same park where they had met, unsure if they would be there again. When he reached the old gazebo, he saw them, the woman sitting with her daughter on the bench, the little girl holding her bunny and talking to the toy as if it could hear her secrets. For a moment, he just watched them, afraid to break the magic. Then the little girl looked up and saw him. Her eyes sparkled. "He came back," she shouted, running towards him with her arms open. He knelt down, hugged her, and felt something inside him melt completely. The woman stood up slowly, her eyes soft but unsure. "You didn't have to come," she said gently. He looked at her and replied, "I didn't come because I had to. I came because I couldn't stay away." His voice trembled. His eyes filled with tears. "You told me it was just for one day, but that one day made me realize what I'd been missing all my life. I used to think love was weakness, but now I know it's the only thing that makes life worth living." The woman's eyes glistened, her lips trembled, but she said nothing. The little girl took both their hands and smiled. "Now you're both smiling," she said innocently. The CEO and the woman looked at each other. The air was quiet. The world felt still, as if even the universe was waiting for their answer. He nodded, tears falling freely. "Then let me have the courage to never let you go again." The little girl clapped, her hands in joy as a gentle breeze brushed through their faces. The sun broke through the clouds, lighting the gazebo like a promise of new beginnings. For the first time, the lonely man wasn't lonely anymore. He had found his family, not by blood, but by fate, by love, by kindness. Friends, life changes in moments we never expect. One act of care, one smile, one day of pretending can open the door to a lifetime of truth. Never underestimate the power of kindness, because sometimes it's the first step toward forever. The days passed, but the memories of that meeting stayed alive in their hearts, like a gentle flame that refused to fade. The CEO, once a man made of stone, found himself smiling at the smallest things. He no longer cared about board meetings or profits. He cared about the laughter of the little girl who now called him uncle. He cared about the woman whose kindness had taught him more than all the success he had ever achieved. Yet deep inside, a fear grew quietly, the fear of losing them, of realizing that maybe this love, this warmth, was never meant to last. One evening, he invited them both to his home, and for the first time in years, the grand mansion wasn't cold or silent. The woman walked in, her eyes wide, not because of the beauty of the house, but because of the sadness she could still feel in its walls. The little girl ran around with joy, her laughter echoing through the hallways like music. That had been missing for too long. The CEO stood at a distance, just watching and smiling softly. When dinner was ready, they sat together. The child began telling stories, waving her hands with excitement, while the two adults just listened. In those moments, the man realized something. This wasn't about pretending anymore. This was home. The woman noticed him staring quietly and asked, "What's wrong?" He looked at her for a long time before speaking. "All my life I bought everything I thought could fill my emptiness. Cars, houses, power, luxury, but none of it ever made me feel alive. You and your daughter came into my world like sunlight after years of winter, and now I'm terrified because I don't know what I'd be without you." Her eyes softened, but tears began to form. "You don't need to be afraid," she said gently. "Love isn't about keeping people with you. It's about giving them a reason to stay." He knelt beside her, his eyes filled with emotion. "You don't know what you've given me," he said. "You didn't just bring laughter into my home. You brought back my soul." The woman placed her hand over his, and for the first time, there was no pretending. No acting, just two hearts finally finding peace. Tears rolled down his face as he whispered, "Thank you for reminding me that love still exists." It felt as if the sky itself was blessing their new beginning. The woman smiled through her tears, saying softly, "Maybe love was never about grand gestures. Maybe it was always about moments like this." They sat together holding hands in silence, while the world outside continued to move. But inside that house, time stood still. A broken man had found his healing. A woman had found trust again. And a little girl had found the father she always dreamed of. Friends, sometimes love doesn't arrive with fireworks. It comes quietly, in kindness, in patience, in moments that touch the soul. Never stop believing in goodness, because somewhere out there, your one act of love might become someone's reason to live again. The night was calm and the rain had stopped. The city lights shimmered in the distance. But inside the CEO's mansion, a different light glowed, the kind that comes only from peace, love, and togetherness. The man who once lived in silence was now sitting on the floor with the little girl, helping her build a small toy house. She laughed every time the blocks fell, and he laughed with her, something he had never done before. The woman watched from the doorway, her heart heavy yet full. She had seen him change from a man buried under loneliness to someone who smiled, cared, and loved. But she also knew life wasn't as simple as stories. She was a single mother with her own scars, her own fears. Could she really stay in this world that was so different from hers? Could love survive beyond kindness and comfort? That night, after putting her daughter to bed, she walked to the garden where the CEO stood under the stars, lost in thought. His eyes were wet, but not from sadness, from the weight of emotions he couldn't name. She stood beside him silently. For a long time, neither spoke. Finally, she broke the silence. "You've changed," she said softly. "You smile more now." He turned toward her, his voice trembling. Because you showed me what life can be." He paused, looking up at the sky. "But every time I smile, I'm also afraid that one day you'll leave, and everything will turn quiet again." She lowered her gaze. "You don't owe me anything," she whispered. You've given us more than we could ever ask for." He shook his head. "No, you don't understand. I don't want to give, I want to share. I want to wake up and hear her laughter every morning. I want to see you smile when the rain starts falling. I want this forever." Tears filled her eyes and she stepped closer. "Forever is a big word," she said with a broken smile. "Are you sure you're ready for it?" She tried to speak, but emotion caught in her throat. He took her hand gently, holding it against his chest where his heart beat fast and strong. "Before you," he whispered, "this heart was just an organ. Now it's alive." At that moment, the little girl appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. "Mommy, can I sleep here tonight? With both of you?" The woman looked at him, her tears finally falling. He nodded without hesitation and lifted the little girl into his arms. "Of course, sweetheart," he said softly. "This house finally has room for love." They sat together on the couch, the child sleeping peacefully between them. The woman leaned her head on his shoulder. He looked at her, the woman who had unknowingly rebuilt his world, and whispered, "You turned my loneliness into life." Friends, sometimes love doesn't come to complete us. It comes to remind us that we were never broken. It teaches us that family isn't about blood. It's about hearts that choose each other, again and again, no matter how hard life gets. It had been a few months since that day, the day everything changed. The once lonely CEO was no longer the man who stared at empty walls and silent rooms. The mansion that used to echo with nothing but footsteps now echoed with laughter. warmth, and life. The woman and her daughter had become his entire world, his reason to wake up every morning and his peace at night. But life has always had its tests. One morning he received an urgent call from his company. A major crisis had hit. The board was panicking. Investors were pulling out, and everyone was waiting for him to fix what only he could fix. For a moment he felt the old fear return, that maybe, to protect his world, he'd have to return to the cold, ruthless man he once was. He stood at the window, torn between duty and heart. The woman entered quietly, noticing the worry on his face. "You're leaving?" she asked softly. He nodded slowly. "For a while. They need me, but..." He paused, his voice breaking. "I'm scared that when I come back, you won't be here." She looked at him, her eyes gentle. "Do you really think love disappears just because you walk away for a while?" She took his hand, placing it over her heart. "Then don't, no matter where you go. Remember this, love isn't a place. It's a feeling you carry with you." The child nodded seriously and handed him her bunny. "Take it with you," she said, "so you don't feel lonely." That small gesture broke him completely. He hugged her close, whispering, "You've already made sure I never will." Finally, after months of struggle, he returned home. When he stepped into the house, he froze. The woman and the little girl were standing by the door, waiting for him. The girl ran to him, shouting with joy, "You came back?" He held her close, and for a long moment, neither spoke. The world outside disappeared. All that existed was this small family bound by love, kindness, and faith. That night, as they sat together watching the rain fall outside once again, the woman asked, "Do you still think it was all pretend?" He shook his head, eyes glistening. "No, it was destiny wearing a disguise." The little girl leaned on his shoulder, slowly falling asleep. He looked at her and whispered softly, "She gave me back my smile. And you gave me back my soul." The woman smiled, holding his hand tightly. "Then promise me one thing," she said. "No matter what happens, keep this kindness alive, not just for us, but for everyone who needs it." Friends, life is unpredictable. It gives us people when we least expect them and takes away loneliness. When we've forgotten how to hope, sometimes pretending leads us to the most real feelings of all. So never stop believing in kindness and second chances, and in love that finds you when you need it most. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Soul of Kindness, where every story reminds you that true love doesn't end. It lives forever in the hearts it touches.